A warm welcome to you on the Gavel. I'm Linda Akibi. The National Assembly has voted on 68 constitution amendment bills. Now, the amendment of these bills are ultimately to review the 1999 Constitution. The National Assembly granted financial and administrative autonomy to all the local governments across the country. It also voted for independent candidacy in elections and separated the office of the Attorney General of the Federation from that of the Minister of Justice. Lawmakers, however, voted against pension for the presiding officers of the National Assembly. It's one of the most important endeavors to be undertaken by the Ninth Assembly, the amendment of the 1999 Constitution. Previous assemblies have had a go at amending the Constitution with varying levels of success. On Tuesday, March 1st, federal lawmakers in the Senate and House of Representatives voted on 68 Constitution amendment bills. Some of these bills center on issues which have captured public interest over the years. Legislators voted in favor of bills devolving powers from the center to the federating units, namely local government financial autonomy, financial independence of state houses of assembly and state judiciary, to move airports from the exclusive legislative list to the concurrent legislative list, to allow states generate, transmit, and distribute electricity in areas not covered by the national grid, to move railway from the exclusive legislative list to the concurrent legislative list.
Time frame for the submission of the names of ministerial or commissioner nominees. Result: yes 93, no 1, abstain 0, total 94. This bill is also passed.
Lawmakers also voted in favor of some constitution amendment bills for good governance and welfare of citizens, namely time frame for the submission of names for ministerial and commissioner nominees, time frame for conduct of census, to separate the office of the Attorney General from the Minister of Justice, State of a Nation / State of a State address, as well as free and compulsory basic education.
Bill for an act to alter the provisions of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria 1999 to establish local government councils as a tier of government and guarantee their democratic existence, and for related matters, to guarantee the existence of local governments as their democratic existence, which is Bill number 2. Voting starts now. We have 15 noes, 258 ayes, and no abstention. Honorable colleagues, remember that your voting pattern is on record, and your constituents will be aware of which way you voted. A bill for an act to alter the provisions of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria 1999 to further strengthen the judiciary for timely dispensation of justice and for related matters. Voting starts now.
On bills to guide the electoral process, federal lawmakers passed independent candidacy, as well as restriction of formation of political parties. However, bills for the termination of tenure on account of change of political party and diaspora voting failed. Other critical bills which failed during the vote include procedure for overriding the president's veto for constitution alteration, timelines for the determination of civil and criminal cases, virtual court hearing, establishment of a federal revenue court and revenue court of a state, to provide for the office of a mayor of the FCT, and appointment of a minister from the FCT. Also, some bills personal to the legislator were thrown out, namely pension for presiding officers of the legislature and immunity for presiding officers and heads of judiciary. All gender bills in the Constitution amendment have failed at the National Assembly, and Nigerian women are still reeling from the disappointment over the failure of the bills during Tuesday's Constitution amendment vote. Lawmakers voted massively against the bills, including the creation of special seats for women at the National and State Houses of Assembly. The bills were expected to address issues of poor representation of women in politics and public life, as well as identity as citizens of Nigeria.
registered.
Months of public engagements and campaigns by female lawmakers and civil society organizations for gender bills to be amended in this phase of constitutional amendment amounted to nothing as federal lawmakers in the Senate and the House of Representatives voted against all 5 gender bills. The visit of the wife of the president, Aisha Buhari, to the National Assembly recently to show support for the bills did not sway lawmakers.
We are here this afternoon to peacefully observe the proceedings on constitutional review about women, and also to listen to the proceedings also concerning the 35 affirmative action about women and special additional seats for women in the National Assembly.
Even the campaigns by female lawmakers also failed to get the bills passed.
There's still a lot of advocacy we need to do, but this is part of our advocacy to ensure we have extra seats for women in the constitutional amendment, because we're going to be voting by Wednesday, so we have to push as much as we can to ensure that our male colleagues understand that it's important for women to be represented in Nigeria. We are going to continue to push. Anybody we know that can make it possible, we'll look for the person. But what we know is we'll give it our best shot to make sure that women in Nigeria have a say, because it starts from lawmaking. If we are making laws, okay, look at constitutional amendment. We are going to vote by simple majority. How many women are there?
I was here when we were like up to 30, and in 7th Assembly we declined. In 8th Assembly we were like 22. Today we are 13. In the world of now, in the world where people are moving forward, nations are electing female presidents, nations are electing female prime ministers, nations have moved on, because whether you like it or not, wherever you put a woman, the woman will make some positive effort to better the society. And so there's no way we'll sit back and not do anything. So this particular bill is about making deliberate effort to alter the negative norm that we find ourselves in.
The 4 bills which the National Assembly failed to pass during the constitutional amendment votes are: provision for 15% affirmative action in political party administration, provision for women to take up indigenship of their husband's state after 5 years of being together, special seats for women in national and state houses of assembly, and 20% minimum percentage for women as ministerial and commissioner nominees. On the day for the constitutional vote, the first bill to create special seats for women in national and state houses of assembly suffers an instant defeat in the Senate.
This bill has failed, and I reluctantly say so.
3 other gender-related bills also suffered the same fate in the upper chamber. In the House of Representatives, a motion was moved to admit the wife of the Vice President, Dolapo Osinbajo, but it appeared some lawmakers were not in support of her presence at the National Assembly. The motion was put to a vote and Mrs. Osinbajo was ushered in. 208 members out of the 290 present voted against the bill to create special seats for women in the national and state houses of assembly. When it was time to vote for a bill to provide for 35% affirmative action for women in political party administration, sensing the voting pattern, a lawmaker and the speaker appealed to their colleagues.
We may be able to reach a form of a consensus on this floor on the need to ensure greater participation for our women folk without necessarily discriminating against the men folk by reducing the percentage proposed in this clause from 35 to 15.
They come out en masse to vote for you and I. You cannot now be seen working against their interests. This particular provision on party administration, I will publish this vote.
The bill to allow women take up indigenship of their husbands' states also suffered the same fate. After sitting through the sad turn of events, a disappointed wife of the Vice President, Dolapo Osinbajo, took her leave. Outside the chamber, she described what she had witnessed.
the demand was because we have capacity. We don't believe it is a favor. We know we have the capacity, and we know this isn't the end of the...
The Minister of Women Affairs and other female lawmakers also expressed disappointment.
What has happened has taken us years back. However, this is a time for women to sit back, unite, and be one.
I do not want to believe that even people who co-sponsored the bill came out this morning to vote against what they are part of sponsoring.
There are policies that affect only women, and it only those of us that pinches that can know how to address such issues.
In a last-ditch move, the Speaker gives special consideration to a bill to provide for a minimum of 20% for women as ministerial and commissioner nominees.
Those in favor of the 20% for women say aye. Those against, please say nay. Clearly, 230s, the ayes have it. 20% for women.
This turned out to be a fruitless move as the bill was rejected in the Senate. The reaction to the votes on gender bills was swift. Nigerian women quickly mobilized and staged a protest at the National Assembly, expressing anger at the decision of their representatives in Parliament.
The two places where the Constitution talked about women were places where they were discriminatory, where they wanted to bring the issue of child marriage, talking about who is an adult, and says when a woman is married, the woman is an adult. In a country where we know that 10-year-old, 12-year-old are being forced to marry.
We want to know which lawmakers voted yes and who voted no for all these bills, because the next step for us is to mobilize at the levels of polling units.
Channels Television spoke to some lawmakers to find out the reasons for rejecting the bill.
If there has been this enough advocacy and orientation of the members of the National Assembly about how harmless those bills are, I'm telling you they would have passed. For example, the Special Seats for Women is a temporary bill that will only go for 2 election cycles and it will die a natural death. And it will be additional seats for women. Not that, because a lot of members thought, the special seats will be taken out from the current seats of the House of Rep members from each state and also senatorial seats from states. So they will be short of 1 each.
There are very few women in the National Assembly. We have like maybe 6 senators. I believe the women didn't have the momentum, first of all, to convince their male colleagues. What I think should happen is that we should go back to the grassroots. If all the parties are saying, my governorship form is 25 million naira, but for a woman, she can come and take it free, that's a good start.
Gender-based bills have typically had a hard time being passed in the National Assembly. The Gender Equality Bill, sponsored by Senator Biodun Ujimi, was thrown out in the 8th Assembly as some of our male colleagues felt it offended their cultural and religious beliefs. It was also reintroduced in the 9th Assembly, but again stepped down also for the same reasons. However, bills like sexual harassment in tertiary education, sponsored by Senator Ovie Omoagege, though not assented to by the President, was passed in the 8th and 9th Senates. It is unlikely that the National Assembly will recommit these bills rejected during this phase of the constitutional amendments. However, for gender rights activists, the battle for parity and equality is far from over.
You're welcome back to the Gavel. There were other activities in the National Assembly away from the Constitution Amendment votes. Here are highlights of some of them.
I am from Abia State.
Weeks after a bill to provide punishment in the National Health Act for public officers who spend public funds on medical tourism was passed through second reading in the House of Representatives, lawmakers have debated a bill to prevent public officers from sending their children or wards to study abroad using public funds.
A completed form.
The sponsor of the bill, Representative Sergio Sogun, believes that this will in turn cause an improvement in the education standard in the country.
It only seeks to ensure that a public officer who desires to send his or her child abroad does not divert public funds to so do. Thus, such public servant must first show that he or she has the legitimate means to sponsor his or her child or ward on such foreign education. Developmental benefit. The bill will help in fostering the development of our educational institutions as it will instill accountability and seriousness into public servants at all levels who are saddled with the responsibility of implementing the policies and programs of government.
Despite this caveat, lawmakers spoke against the bill and urged the lawmaker to step it down.
Which other jurisdiction has an enabling law that bans its citizens, the public officers, from going to study, including those of them that are born overseas? So my own take is that it will be good to have a knowledge-based response to this.
I stand before Nigerians to say that Chinyere Igwe, I do not control public funds. So if I send my children to school abroad, have I in any way done any wrong? Mr. Speaker, it is neither here nor there that because I'm a public officer, I shouldn't send my children to go and school abroad, as my colleague has posited. Mr. Speaker, we are chasing shadow.
The best is just to step down this bill. As he has said, it's against the human rights. It's against my own rights. Most of us, before coming here, have our children schooling abroad. So it's not maybe because we are public officers, you not see as children schooling abroad. Some have the means, apart from being in government.
Representative Sergio Sogun was, however, adamant and insisted on the merits of the bill.
How can you write a budget, the civil servant, you bring it to the National Assembly to pass it, and the executive will be the ones to implement it, and all their children are schooling outside? The last time we were debating ASU strike here, Honorable TJ here, the tape was trending, the clip was trending 2 weeks ago, that level 8 officers in the ministry have 4 children overseas. Then the NASS president said lecturers are sending their children overseas. The NUC president, chairman or executive secretary, the last time the child was graduating abroad. These are the people determining the curriculum of the Nigerian universities.
The matter was put to a vote and the bill is voted against.
Those in favor that the bill be read as a content say aye. Against say nay. The nays have it.
The bill is coming on the heels of an ongoing strike action by Academic Staff Union of Universities over, among other things, lack of up-to-date equipment in Nigerian universities, and amid concerns that public officers send their children abroad to study while refusing to pay attention to the poor state of government schools. Meanwhile, the House of Representatives has set up an ad hoc committee to establish areas of mergers, synergies, and justifications of the existence of some established agencies, departments, boards, parastatals, and corporations which are no longer needed in the country. The House reached a resolution following a motion on the need to investigate the duplication of functions of agencies of the federal government, sponsored by the Chief Whip of the House, Mr. Mohammed Munguno.
Worried that with the existence of about 1,484 agencies, departments, boards, parastatals, and corporations in the country, with the attendant duplication of functions and class of interest, there is likelihood of the latest World Bank annual ratings to slide considerably. The House to resolve, establish areas of mergers, synergies, and justification for the existence of some established agencies, departments, boards, parastatals, and corporations which are no longer needed in the country, are report back within 6 weeks for further legislative action.
In view of the Dangote refinery currently being built in Lagos, lawmakers want the federal government to consider building a rail track.
Considering the usual heavy traffic situation on the Lekki axis of Lagos State, the influx of activities that the Dangote refinery will bring will result in serious traffic congestion. Hence, an alternative means of transportation needs to be provided to prevent unending gridlock. The
Committee on Works and Land Transport is mandated to ensure compliance. Lawmakers also debated a security motion specifically on the insecurity in Anambra State, which they say requires urgent attention.
Worried that several efforts made to locate Mr. Steady, Onome Idisi, and Emmanuel have so far proved abortive, as their whereabouts is still uncertain, and the victims may be held in captivity in a camp deep in Osumogu Forest, where, by the account of an escapee, there is electricity, generators, SUV vehicle, and is likely a city of its own.
They have killed a lot of people. They have killed them. It's not about ransom. They have killed so many people so far, and as of date from last week, at least I have seen 8 bodies that were recovered from that camp.
The Senate's Committee on Finance has proposed that NAFDAC should be removed from the federal government's yearly budget. The chairman of the committee, Senator Solomon Adiola, made this call during an investigative hearing on remittances of revenue-generating agencies to the Federation accounts. Worried by revenue shortages in the country, the Senate had threatened to withhold the budgets of some government agencies who have refused to remit revenues generated to the Federation accounts. Members questioned the Director General of NAFDAC on its remittances to the Federation account after the Fiscal Responsibility Commission disclosed that NAFDAC owes the federal government the sum of 8.5 billion naira.
After the audited account, 80% of the surplus goes to the government. We have been doing that since I joined NAFDAC, so we are not deficient on any amount of money to the government. There is no commodity. We are not generating revenue.
All of this item of transaction which you do to us constitute revenue. And I don't know, maybe you have any part of your law that says you should spend part of the revenue.
And again, Madam Clerk, right, they are exiting a budget to the extent of overhead and capital.
Meanwhile, the Senate Committee on Customs is seeking the amendment of the 2021 Finance Act. The chairman of the Customs Committee disclosed this during a meeting with the Controller General of the Nigeria Customs Service. Speaking to Channels Television after the meeting, the committee chairman says this is necessary to address the problem of who collects the 10 naira tariff on carbonated drinks.
This issue of carbonated drink was raised, and it was agreed that the Finance Act will be amended because it's the duty of the custom to collect revenue on tariff based on this 10% of carbonated drink. And we are on it so that to amend the Finance Act so that it is the duty of the custom to do that.
The Customs Committee also wants the agency to repair the faulty scanners at the ports to enhance security and improve the revenue of the country.
Now, this is where we call it a day on this week's edition of The Gavel. If you have any views on any of the issues discussed, please email us on thegavel@channelstv.com. Thank you for staying with us and see you again next week.